But welcome to this presentation on the implications of the data center infrastructure built by big tech companies in the Gulf. To first introduce myself, my name is Aksel Eck. I'm from Norway. I'm an undergrad student of international relations, specializing in international political economy at Blanquerna Universitat Ramon Llull in Barcelona. And as a part of this degree, I have this semester had the opportunity to do an internship with SMEX, doing research, and my main focus has been the research relevant to this presentation. So, as this is a research still in progress, I will first present some of the findings so far in the research, and the second part will be open for questions, discussions, and suggestions for further aspects of the topic to research. And when the research is done, we're going to publish a report on SMEX's website about the research. So if anyone is interested in reading this, you can come talk to me afterwards, and we'll write down your emails and we can notify you once it is out. First, in my presentation, I will make a point about what data centers are, why they're important, and also the significance of where they're located. Second, I will be sharing some of the initial findings of the research, which is essentially mapping out what companies are investing in data center infrastructure and in what countries they're doing it. This I will see in light of the weak data protection laws of many of the Gulf countries, as well as the history we know of these states' digital authoritarianism. And finally, I will be emphasizing just how close the extent to which the companies are collaborating with the governments in order to realize these projects. First, I want to present you with some statistics to make clear just how significant this trend is. This year, the data center market in the MENA region is estimated at $3.4 billion. And over the next 6 years, it's expected to almost triple. And in 2028, it's expected to be worth $10.4 billion, with half of this being in the Gulf countries. Parallelly with this trend, a 400% increase in data consumption is also expected in the region. And this is happening as the Gulf economies are trying to transition away from oil dependency and are laying out plans for digital transformation. And these digital transformations, the data centers, are integral pieces of infrastructure. So what are data centers? So data centers are essentially physical facilities composed of network computers, storage systems, and computing infrastructure, which organizations like enterprises and governments use to store, manage, and disseminate data. There are many different types of data centers depending on their purpose, but the data centers relevant to these presentations are the ones supporting cloud regions and providing cloud services. And throughout the presentation, I will be mentioning the term cloud regions a lot, and cloud regions are essentially supported by multiple separate data centers. And when we talk about data locality and data locality in the cloud, it should be noted that data locality in the cloud is extremely ambiguous. Data is stored and duplicated all over the place, but as a principle, they're often stored in the nearest data center. And as we do own our own data, but ultimately the cloud service provider and the physical container of the data has the ultimate control over it. And this is significant because the data is subject to the law in the country, the law of the country in which the physical container or the data center is located. And this I will talk more about later. But first, I will be presenting the findings of what companies are the most significant ones investing in data center infrastructure in the region. And as there is little to no research on this topic from before, the first steps of the research was essentially cross-searching companies with countries and looking for announcements, articles, and news pieces about data centers being built. And what we found is that there is a plethora of companies, primarily American and Chinese, that are venturing into the data center market of the MENA region, as governments are giving economic incentives and companies are seeking profits from these ventures. The main companies we found that are investing in the structures are Google, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, Equinix, as well as Huawei and Alibaba. Google has two projects currently in the Gulf. They're building a data center in Saudi Arabia in collaboration with the state-owned company Aramco, an oil company, as well as they're planning. They announced this year that they're planning a data center in Qatar in collaboration with state-owned telecom company Ooredoo, becoming an integral part of their cloud services. Amazon built their first cloud region in the Middle East in 2019 in Bahrain in collaboration with the Bahraini government. And they also built a cloud region in the United Arab Emirates in collaboration with Emirati government agencies. I can say that, for example, the AWS, the Amazon cloud regions, have 3 availability zones, which are essentially 3 separate data centers. Microsoft have built two cloud regions in the United Arab Emirates, one in Dubai and one in Abu Dhabi, both in collaboration with local authorities. And they are also in the process of building a data center in Qatar in collaboration with the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. IBM have also built 2 data centers in the UAE, one in Abu Dhabi and one in Dubai. And they are also engaging in a project in Saudi Arabia, which is not a physical data center per se, but it is a significant piece of cloud infrastructure, as they're enabling their cloud satellite to be used by Saudi customers so they can keep their data within Saudi borders. Also, we have Oracle and Equinix, which are 2 tech giants from the US, essentially specializing in physical data infrastructure. And these companies are not that much in the public eye, and they go a bit under the radar. And I will also mention Huawei and Alibaba as the 2 most significant Chinese companies venturing into the data center market of the MENA region. So, as I mentioned, the data is subject to the law of the geographical hosting country of the data centers. So, as this trend is developing, what consequences will it have that more and more data will be stored and processed within the borders of countries such like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates? These countries, they mostly do have personal data protection laws in place, but there are many articles that concern loopholes and exceptions in cases such as exceptions for public authorities, exceptions for national security, and for reputation. And these provisions, they contain vague language which don't make the law clear, essentially leaving some agency for the authoritarian governments to exercise their authoritarian practices. And we know that many of these countries have histories of digital authoritarianism, of restricting internet freedom, manipulating public opinion, of surveillance, and of silencing dissidents. They have also kind of broken the barrier of showing the willingness to obtain information from US technology companies in order to collect personal data about their citizens, in order to track them down, locate, and ultimately punish them, such as the infiltration, like they have infiltrated Twitter in the past, for example. So the fact that these big tech companies are venturing into markets in countries with the context of weak data protection laws, of history of digital authoritarian practices, and of that have shown willingness to utilize the American big tech companies in order to get information and carry out some authoritarian practices. This context in itself might be, you can say that this is valid reason for criticism. But was really striking doing this research was the fact that uh, there is a very close collaboration between many of the, basically all the big tech companies and the governments of the region. Almost all the examples I cited of the projects are in collaboration with some type of a government entity, either a state-owned enterprise, local authorities, or the central government itself. And what is taking this business government collaboration even further is the fact that many of them are explicitly committing to contributing to the national vision plans, the plans that these countries have to uh, for basically every aspect of their society, which include digital transformation programs. So, as some examples, I will show you these not very clear screenshots, but they are essentially companies on their website boasting about their commitments to helping the governments reach their goals. Um, IBM has, through their provision of the IBM Cloud Satellite, committed to contributing to the Saudi Vision 2020. Oracle and Microsoft they have, through their provision of cloud services, committed to contributing to the United Arab Emirates digital transformation program. And I can also mention that Alibaba Cloud has committed to the Saudi Vision 2030 by becoming the central cloud provider in Saudi Arabia. Um, so, as I mentioned, the national visions are essentially strategic frameworks that the governments are working towards transforming their society, and many of them, or almost all of them, include digital transformation programs. For example, the Saudi Vision 2020 has in their digital transformation program the plans to realize a fully smart government, which includes artificial intelligence and facial recognition technology. And the explicit motivations for these national visions, and also the explicit motivations for the big tech companies investing in the data center infrastructure, they're business oriented, citing promises of economic growth and technological innovation. And there's little doubt that there will be economic growth as a consequence of this, as economic projections for the region are showing expected growth. However, there might be, it's easy to think that there is a much darker backside to this coin. Um, Knowing what we know about the history and the context in these countries. And this backside, it's hard to predict exactly what it will be. It will partly depend on what businesses will have the data of their customers processed through these data centers, but it can constitute a risk for the populations of within these countries, but also in the extended region, as customers in other countries might also have their data filtered through these data centers. Um, so the big tech companies are either ignorant to or turning a blind eye to these possible consequences. In relation to the Saudi project, no, the Google project in collaboration with the Saudi government through Aramco, the organization Some of Us introduced a call for them to halt their project, a call which was joined by SMEX and other rights organizations. And while the proposal was shut down by top executives of Google, they did promise that they would do a human right assessment of the region. And they did this, but they said that they will not make any findings public, so this is not very concerning for their human rights due diligence in the region. So, to sum up, knowing these aspects of the significance of data centers, the significance of where they're located through being subject to the law of the geographical hosting countries of the data centers, knowing the weak data protection laws in many of these countries, um, as well as the history of digital authoritarian practices, I want to end the presentation with a question which I will pose like this. Can we say that these big tech companies, through providing the data processing capacity, are providing the capacity and fueling digital authoritarianism in the region? Thank you. So if there are any questions, any comments, I would be happy to answer. Yes.
Well, if you know, in Egypt, the Egyptian government is building a really big data center as well, which is basically targeting the local needs of the government, and they're planning to avail it to private sector as well.
Okay.
So, in the light of this info, do you think it would be, I mean, if the big techs are providing this to the Gulf area, is this better? Because if this didn't happen, maybe the Gulf area would make their own, so it would be far worse, I believe.
There might be, but the fact is that, or what I found is that the governments, they don't have the capacity on their own to build so much capacity, to build so much infrastructure on their own. So they're kind of leveraging the competition between both within the U.S. Big tech giants, but also the competition between U.S. and Chinese companies. Like this competition, they're utilizing it in order to be able to build this capacity even faster, as it's like spurring a lot of technological innovation. It's the developments are happening really fast, and I don't think the governments would be able to provide this dimension of capacity on their own without the involvement of the biggest tech companies of the world. So,
Yes, well,
yeah.
this is the case in Egypt because
Okay.
there is Huawei and other big techs that are building the data center, but they are to build and then it will be operated by the Egyptian party. Not, they won't operate afterwards. So,
Yes.
so this is the question.
So what was the question exactly?
I mean that in Egypt, I believe it's a bit worse than this because the whole project it's a really big project.
Yeah.
I know some info about it.
But Huawei is providing the structure, or
Yes,
okay.
they are doing some parts in the hardware and some parts in the cloud engine and this kind of stuff.
Okay.
This is, for example, I'm sure there are others, but I don't know.
Well, in many of the cases that I cited here, the government will also have exercise control over the data centers. There are also cases of government entities migrating their IT-based infrastructure onto these platforms. And well, also the degree of control is hard to say, even if a foreign company is providing the infrastructure. But anyways, it's it's kind of concerning because of the legal implications of it. And but if it would be better if the government built it themselves, or if a tech company, foreign big tech company is providing the structure, I don't know how to answer this. But anyways, the government, when it's built inside the borders, it will have the capacity to exercise control over the data which is in the data centers. Yes. Maybe I think you should ask the question. Sorry.
Thank you for the presentation. Actually, more on the economic side, do you have any idea about how much money is at stake here? About the profits? About what would represent this profit in comparison to the whole profit of these big data companies? In addition, obviously, for instance, you've said it's a competition between the U.S. and Chinese. This is happening, I think, all over the world, especially with the 5G, etc. But mainly here, how much money is there I mean, and do we have, or do you have, or are there any figures about the amounts there and their percentage of the whole amount of the okay. Do you have this by companies? Because it would be very important to know this by companies and to compare it to the whole profit or the whole turnover of the company, and then would be relate this to the investors, stakeholders, etc.
So the figures here are, from what I understood, they are from the direct investments of data centers, the facilities in themselves. But they also cite that because it will attract business into the country and also make economic processes quicker, it will accumulate to spurring more economic growth in general within the countries. Um, and as I said, there is little research and generally little information about the projects available online. So the exact amount invested and the exact profit prospects of each project, it's hard to say, but it is on the plan to research this more to try to figure out, like, company by companies, who is earning what. But the overarching lines, let's say, is that this development will see like a compound annual growth rate of 20% per year in the Gulf region. And so the prospects are definitely there, and they're all profiting from this. And it has implications for the whole economic ecosystem as the digitalization of the whole economy is happening. And but definitely an aspect we're looking into more is to map out the specific economic, like the market shares of each companies.
I know this question isn't exactly what sort of you've been covering, but the question you asked for us at the end was, are these things fueling digital authoritarianism? In your research, is there a reason to believe that there are states that practice digital authoritarianism that don't practice regular authoritarianism? And so by that I'm asking, is digital authoritarianism just another practice of authoritarian governments, in which case maybe our response needs to look at all of the enablers that are allowing them to keep practicing authoritarian practice, right? I mean, the money that they are able to contribute, of course, if Oracle gives them a discount, that's on Oracle's side, but the other money they pay for that infrastructure is also coming from all the other support that authoritarian states are receiving in other industries, other sectors. I still completely agree that this is a priority, but the question I'm wondering about is, how different is digital authoritarianism from other kinds of authoritarianism? And so in one test that I'm now thinking about would be, are there states that are digital authoritarians that aren't other authoritarians that you might have come across or thought of in your research?
It's a good question. It's a challenging one. But like, as the focus is the Gulf, they are definitely regular authoritarians, as well as adding the exercising authoritarian practices through digital means. I don't think I can think of an example of a state that is not authoritarian but digital authoritarian. But sort of the position that, or the argument kind of that I am trying to make through focusing on the data centers is that these are sort of the basic infrastructure of the whole, like, digital ecosystem. And by, like, exponentially increasing the capacity for data processing and data processing, which will see more data being processed within these legislations, it will provide more capacity for the digital means of exercising authoritarianism. So yeah, that's the basic. One last.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have one question. Do you think you'll be actually extend your research to see what kind of services are going to actually host their services in those kind of data centers? In a sense, do you think Facebook would host their regional data in these countries on another kind of services? For example, I was having conversation with one of the VPNs companies last year. They wanted to give better service for their users in the MENA region. So they're actually thinking to host their data on Amazon servers in UAE. And they actually had no idea that, as you were saying, like in UAE, they actually have mass surveillance. So the idea of having VPN in UAE, VPN is to circumvent censorship. Meanwhile, you're actually trafficking your data into a mass surveillance pool, like. So do you think you're gonna extend your research to see who's gonna be hosting there, so they can actually be aware of the risks on their own users if they care?
Thank you for the question. So, as I said initially, like the data localization within the cloud is very ambiguous, and also the information about it is not very transparent. So it's hard to say accurately exactly what data will be stored and processed through these data centers. But I think definitely there is a risk that, for example, data from Facebook will be in this ecosystem. In fact, there is a data center. I do not exactly remember which one. I think it was in Bahrain, which will be connected to the Meta Africa 2 cable that is like transferring Meta Facebook data through like throughout the world. Or, yeah, I can say this. I can. I will look through my like basic research later, and I will let you know exactly which data center which would be linked with the Meta cable. But and definitely, even though there is not that much information available, and that the data localization in the cloud is unclear and a bit ambiguous, we are trying to. It's definitely a goal of the research to try to be able to pinpoint more accurately exactly which data will be processed through here. Um, so thank you for adding this important aspect. So thank you everyone for good questions and for listening.